Hi, everybody. How are you today? My name is Sarah Meyer, and I am going to be focusing on the topic of reinforcement versus bribery. For this, we're going to be focusing on how to support positive behavior strategies in your home. This is the second of our parent training series through Professional Therapy Associates. So who is your presenter? It's me. I am Sarah Meyer, a board certified behavior analyst. I also hold my licensed behavior specialist certification in the state of Pennsylvania as well. And I am the program coordinator at Professional Therapy Associates. Let's take a look at some of the objectives to what we are learning for today. The first topic is what are reinforcement and bribery? Those are going to be our two key words that we focus on for today. The next one is how do they compare and contrast with each other? How are they similar yet different? And the next part is reinforcement strategies for the home. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the things that we can do at home to help support our kids in those positive behaviors that we love to see. So our first big topic of discussion, what is reinforcement? Reinforcement is the process of proactively adding or removing something to increase the likelihood that the designated behavior will occur again. Reinforcement occurs naturally within our environment, but we can also manipulate it to make it work with us. Some examples. I go to work, I get a paycheck. I am more reinforced to continue going to work because I get that paycheck. And because I love my job as well. But also that paycheck is pretty nice in helping reinforce that behavior. The next one, I finished my test early. I get to go home earlier. I am more reinforced to finish my test because I know that if I finish it quickly, I'll be able to get home sooner. And the next example, I do my chores, I will get an allowance. I am more likely to do my chores because I know that that allowance is in my future. We're going to take a look at kind of what drives reinforcement. And one of the things that drives reinforcement is our motivation to do something. Our goal is we always want to move from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation. When we take a look at the two, extrinsic motivation is often that we are motivated to perform an activity because we want to earn something tangible. We want to earn a reward. We want to avoid punishment. We're doing it so that we can get something physical. Intrinsic motivation is that we're motivated to perform an activity for its own sake and personal rewards. That's the thought that I'm going to do something because it makes me feel good about doing something. We can think about volunteering. Typically, when we're volunteering, we're motivated to do that extra work because it makes us feel good about what we're doing. We don't need that paycheck. We don't need that extrinsic motivation. It helps us be more motivated to do it because we want to do it. It's really important to remember that this doesn't always occur naturally, especially for children, and even more for children that have a variety of disabilities. Some children may require a lot more of that extrinsic motivation in order to do something that we may see as something that is natural for them to want to do. It also may be really useful in helping our children engage in appropriate behaviors. There's a lot of times that when I'm speaking to parents, I kind of hear that thought of, my child should want to do this. They should want to make others happy. They should want to make themselves happy. And we have to remember that that's not always developmentally appropriate for our kids, and that we have to teach them that there is a way to get to that point. But we have to start off sometimes with that extrinsic motivation. We have to add in some of those reinforcers. So we're going to take a look. There are two main types of reinforcement. Our first, and I'm sure you guys have all heard this term, is positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is the process of adding something to increase a behavior. And we're going to, by adding something, it's going to help us ensure that that behavior is more likely to occur again. The second term is negative reinforcement. And although it does have that negative word in it, it is actually something that's really positive for our students when we're looking to increase those behaviors. Negative reinforcement is the process of removing something to increase the likelihood of a behavior occurring. Now, those two terms can be a little tricky. So we're going to take a look at some examples where we see similar things happening before and similar things happening after. But in both scenarios, they're being reinforced. It's just either through that positive reinforcement or through that negative reinforcement. So positive reinforcement, our first example. I do all of my chores. I earn an allowance. I'm more likely to do my chores again. In this situation, we are adding something. We're adding that allowance. And by adding that, we're increasing the likelihood that the child is going to do their chores again. With negative reinforcement, again, same beginning and ending. If I do all my chores Monday through Thursday, I can earn no chores on Friday. In that situation, I might be more likely to do my chores again. So you can see in both examples, we're focusing on doing chores and increasing the ability that the child is going to do their chores more independently. However, in the first scenario, we're adding a reinforcer. In the second scenario, we're removing something that is unpreferred. Let's take a look at some more examples. Positive reinforcement. The whole class gets 100 on their spelling tests. We're going to add something to increase that happening again. The class is going to earn an ice cream party. I bet the class is much more likely to study for that test if they know they're going to earn an ice cream party. Negative reinforcement. The whole class gets 100 on a spelling test. And if they do that, the class earns no homework that night. Again, those kids are going to be more likely to study for that test because we are removing something that they don't like in order to continue with that behavior. So in both situations, the children are being reinforced. They're earning something that's really important to them, but it may look different because in some situations we're adding something for them to earn. Some situations we're allowing them to earn the removal of something that they don't like. A couple more examples. So positive reinforcement, if I play nicely with my siblings, I get to earn extra screen time at the end of the day. I'm more likely to play nicely with my siblings because I want to earn that extra thing. Negative reinforcement, I play nicely with my siblings. I don't have to eat broccoli at dinner. I'm more likely to play with my siblings because I really don't want to eat that broccoli. And taking away that broccoli is super reinforcing. Let's take a look at what is bribery. So bribery is the process of reactively adding or removing something to stop a behavior from occurring. Some examples. If you stop crying, I will buy you that toy. If you stop arguing, you don't have to do your homework. If you stop complaining about your chores, we can watch a movie instead. So let's take a look at the two. Sometimes it's easier when we're looking at reinforcement and bribery to look at them side by side so that we can compare what is similar and what is so different. Reinforcement and bribery can look very, very similar. And this is something that we work a lot with our clients in the school, our clients in our clinical setting, and even our clients within the home and natural environments, because they can look really similar and are sometimes hard to distinguish. Reinforcement increases positive behaviors, which naturally decrease negative behaviors. Bribery attempts to stop negative behaviors when they are already occurring, and they don't typically support a positive behavior. Let's take a look at the two side by side. Reinforcement. Rewards are earned as an incentive for a job well done. It creates lasting positive change on behavior. It's planned ahead of time, and it's delivered with praise. It's super, super important when we're thinking about reinforcement that even when our kids are earning something tangible, they're earning an activity, we always want to deliver that with a really high level of praise. Providing that level of praise is going to assist our learners in moving from that extrinsic to that intrinsic motivation. That praise is our number one thing to help them feel good about what they're doing and to crave that feeling of, doing well and doing good again. The next section is bribery. So bribes are given in response to a challenging behavior. Bribes also change the behavior in the moment. It's typically a quick fix, but it's not going to help you in the long run. And bribery is also reactive, and it's typically delivered out of frustration. We're typically delivering bribes when we want a child to stop what they're doing immediately, kind of at any means necessary. And again, we're all human. These things happen. Even as a professional, I sometimes have to even check myself and say, ooh, was that reinforcement or am I bribing the child to stop what they're doing? So we're going to take a look at a video and we're going to, it's going to give us a little bit more information on kind of what a reinforcement is versus what a bribe is.
Let's look at what reinforcement is versus bribery. Reinforcements are rewards that are earned for a job well done. Using reinforcement positive and lasting change. However, bribery changes behavior but not activity. Reinforcement is fortified plants and delivered from friends. Bribery is delivered from it's reactive and delivered to frustration. With reinforcement, the adult is in control and determines when and how to observe and genocide. Negotiation is made in exchange for compliance or desired behavior.
So again, that video just takes it a little step further and kind of discussing what we had just talked about. Okay, so again, reinforcement and bribery, we're going to look at them both side by side again. So important things to remember about reinforcement. When we're using reinforcement, the adult is in control. The adult is providing the reinforcer, the adult is providing the expectations. In reinforcement, it's also child driven because the adult and the child are working together to determine what that appropriate behavior is and what the child is going to earn. So the child's going to have to put in the work on their point too, so that they can earn that reinforcer that they're looking for. Reinforcement is a teaching tool. It helps teach positive behaviors outside of the scenario when a negative behavior is occurring. So in other words, we're teaching that child appropriate behaviors to engage in when the child is happy and content and they're engaged with us. Lastly, reinforcement is predetermined. It's not something that we're coming up with in the moment when a negative behavior is already happening. It's something that, again, we've discussed with the child. The child knows what they're working for. They know what the reward is, and it's set beforehand so that the child has that in their mind when they're engaging in the activity. Bribery. With bribery, the child is in control. In this situation, the child is already maybe heightened, or they're already upset or engaging in a behavior that's not appropriate for the environment. And they are calling the shots on kind of when that behavior is going to end based on what they can get. Bribery is also adult driven. In this scenario, we often see parents or other adults that are kind of offering everything under the sun to the child and to help them calm down and to help them, be able to transition back to that positive behavior. It's often seen as a quick fix. It's not something that is going to teach the child anything appropriate for upcoming situations when this behavior may occur. And it also occurs in the moment. So it's not the child earning a predetermined reward. It's that the child is, they're kind of getting what they can get at that time and within that situation. So reinforcement at home. Let's take a look at how we can utilize these strategies in the home environment. So tips for using reinforcement. Reinforcement increases positive behaviors and indirectly decreases negative behaviors. When choosing how to reinforce your child, there are some things that you need to consider. And these 3 things that we're going to talk about are going to be the basis for the remainder of this presentation. When we are considering that we want to put a good reinforcement schedule in for our kids, there are 3 things that we really need to focus on. The first being our expectations, the second being consistency, and the third being a time limit. We're going to go deeper into these 3 areas, and we're also going to align them with some examples that may be a little bit more real world that we can take a look at. So tips for using reinforcement. We always want to take a look at our expectations. We want our expectations to be clear. We want to always have a plan, and we don't want to change those expectations without warning. So a couple questions that I want you to ask yourself when you're thinking about the expectations for your child. The first one is, what exactly am I reinforcing? What do I want my child to do? What exactly outlines that situation? Am I asking something of my child that they are capable of, or do I need to dial back my expectations? And does my child know exactly what they need to do? Let's take a look at these questions with an example. So we're going to be utilizing this example for all 3 of our 3 main subjects that we're going to look at here. So our example, Johnny's mom wants Johnny to clean his room every day. Johnny's mom has reminded him multiple times, but Johnny never cleans his room all the way. Johnny's mom is considering using an allowance for a clean room. So let's ask ourselves those questions that we just saw about this example. So the first one, what exactly am I reinforcing? This is when we can take a look and say, what does a clean room mean to you exactly? Because, as parents, as caregivers, everybody may have a different expectation of what a clean room means for their child. For some parents, a clean room might just mean that our toys are put away and that basic clutter is gone. For other parents, it may mean that our bed is set, our clothes are put away in the correct drawers, our desk is organized. It can be very different depending on your child and what that expectation is for you. So it's very clear to kind of take that step back in the beginning to say, all right, what exactly is my main goal for my child? What do I want them to do? Along with that, you also have to consider, am I asking something of my child that they are capable of? Or do I need to dial back my expectations? We all know, even within our own careers and within our own lives, we may have a main goal that we want to accomplish, but it doesn't typically happen overnight. We may need to break that main goal into smaller steps that are easier for your child to accomplish and that they're easier to keep track of and continue moving forward with. So a question we can ask ourselves, is Johnny able to complete multi-step tasks without support? We may look at the example of just setting a bed. When we're looking at setting a bed can have 7 to maybe 12 different steps that the child has to do in order to reach that final goal. So if we know that our child struggles maybe in following directions that are more than 3 or 4 steps, setting the bed completely independently may not be an attainable goal at this time. And then, does my child know exactly what they need to do? So are you able to sit with your child and can they explain to you, what does a clean room mean to them? And then you can see, well, you say, hey, Johnny, tell me what it means to have a clean room. We can see this is Johnny's perspective, and then this is my perspective. And that could also be a big area where we might see that discourse and some of that frustration. All right, so our expectations. Let's take a look at some strategies when we're setting those expectations. The first one is have the child tell you what needs to be completed of a clean room. This collaboration period is really important because that way you can sit down with the child and you can see if they're able to explain to you what that room needs to look like in order to be clean. And then you're going to outline what needs to be done to meet those expectations. So before coming up with a reward, before you get yourself frustrated with that, we're going to outline exactly what that means for a child. Some children who are readers, a checklist can be a great way to do this. For other kids who may not be as fluent in their reading, you can use a picture board or a visual schedule that maybe has a picture of each thing that you want the child to do. The next part is observe the child cleaning their room. Take a look. What are some things that they can do independently? And what are things that they need reminders or assistance? The things that I would say is when you give that direction to the child to clean their room, look at that first thing and that second thing that they're doing, because those may typically be the ones that they're most confident in doing on their own. Practice cleaning the room with the child. This is something that you guys can go through. Maybe you have that checklist and that picture schedule set. Go through it with the child. We always want to give them that teaching opportunity where we're able to sit with them and model what we expect so that the child is able to see it and they're able to kind of go through those steps with you. And then again, change your expectations if you need. This can be hard as a parent because again, we may always want that end result. It's easier for us just to have a clean room, even though that may not be in the child's repertoire of skills yet. So meet your child halfway. See what they're capable of doing. The best thing that I can say is when we're starting with any reinforcement schedule, we want to make it just above what the child can completely do independently, because this way they're going to build confidence. And building confidence is crucial in helping kids build these multi-step schedules for themselves. And always praise for a job well done. Even if it's not 100% what you expected, always find something to praise your child about. It can be something as little as, hey, I loved how you picked up almost all of your toys. You did that all by yourself. That's really awesome. Okay, our second area goes into consistency. This is our second main topic of reinforcement. One of the biggest things I say is make sure this is something you can commit to. When we're working with reinforcement, again, we want to remember we're going to start small and build to bigger and bigger skills. So this needs to be something that we're not going to do it for 2 weeks and then it goes away. Because at that point, the child's going to say, hey, I was getting this really cool thing for doing what I need to do, and now it's gone. That motivation is going to dissipate. So again, make sure it's something that we can all commit to. So some questions to ask yourself. Am I able to follow up on reinforcement when I say it will happen? Are the expectations the same every day, in every environment, and with every person? This is really, really important, especially when we're coming up with reinforcement strategies in the home that all family members need to be on board with. And will I commit to doing this for longer than just in the moment when it's needed most? We don't want to just, again, we're going to have lots of tools in our pocket, but when it comes to motivation and it comes to reinforcement, we have to be in it for the long haul. Okay, so we're going to go back to our example about Johnny and his room cleaning. And again, we want that allowance. How are we going to do it? So those questions that we're going to ask ourselves about this example. Am I able to follow up on reinforcement when I say it will happen? I'm going to say, how much allowance will you get and when are you going to get it? If I tell you you're going to earn $1 at the end of the day, when I do your room check-in, I need to make sure that I'm giving the child that dollar when I say I am. We're not going to wait until tomorrow. We're not going to wait until Friday. It's going to occur when we say it will occur. Are the expectations the same every day, in every environment, with every person? Maybe if we think about this, if mom is typically the one running this and mom is at work, is dad going to be consistent with it? Are our grandparents going to be consistent with it? Are maybe an older brother or sister or babysitter going to be consistent with it? We want to make sure that everybody is on the same plan, because we want to make sure that when Johnny is doing what he needs to do, we're also doing what we need to do. And then will I commit to doing this for longer than just an in the moment when it's needed most? Once the child has learned the routine and they learn that they're going to get an allowance, we can't make it magically disappear. It's kind of that idea, that if we go to work and we do so many hours of work, we're expecting to get that same dollar amount in our paycheck. We're expecting to get that. If all of a sudden that changes or decreases, it's going to affect our productivity. So we have to kind of consider that in the same way when we're working with our kids. So some strategies that we can think about when we are working on being consistent with reinforcement. We are going to come up with a written plan between you and your child, and this should be made with the child. So again, some of our children may not be readers yet, and this is perfectly fine. We're going to utilize pictures. So we maybe will do a picture of toys in our toy box, clothes in our hamper equals $1. And that can be something that the child can also refer back to when they're going to be working, on engaging in that skill. And then when we can think of rewards for some kids, it could even be, I put my toys away, I put my clothes in my hamper, I get an extra special snack that I really like to have. So we can always be, we can work with those reinforcers with the kids to see what they like the most. Have a clear day and time when the child will receive reinforcement. I always find it helpful to set reminders for yourself. Maybe you can put an alarm on your phone, but set reminders to check in with yourself and to provide support to that child if there is a lot of other things going on. We do this in the clinical and in the school settings as well. We'll have teachers or staff members that may have little reminders go off on their phone saying, hey, Johnny went 15 whole minutes of sitting in his seat and didn't get up. We're going to give him that praise. We're going to give him a high five. He earned that praise and that reinforcement for doing what he needs to do. And the next one is don't change the rules and expectations halfway through unless your child is ready. Make sure any changes are clear for the child. One of the biggest things that I really want to point out is to avoid the concept of punishment during this. So for example, with Johnny in the allowance, say he argues with you about cleaning his room and he doesn't want to do it and he's refusing to do it. Avoid going to him and saying, well, now you lost your dollar for tomorrow. Because all that's going to do is it's going to unmotivate him for the next day. So always listen, I say we take it day by day, we take it hour by hour, we take it minute by minute. But we are really avoiding at any cost to punish the child or remove things, especially once they've already earned it. Again, going back to our paycheck scenario, it's kind of that idea of, hey, if you take a sick day, instead of you having that sick day, I'm going to deduct $100 from your paycheck. It's not going to make you more motivated to go in the next day and be ready to do what you need to do. All right, our third example and our third and final thing that we're going to be talking about is a time limit. So be clear on where and when reinforcement will occur. A couple questions again to ask yourself. How long is my child able to wait before the reinforcer is no longer reinforcing? And this is a really important question to ask yourself. The second, am I able to accept starting small to work up to longer time limits? And how quickly can I provide the reinforcer once it's earned? We're going to go back to our scenario with Johnny here. Again, Johnny's mom wants his room clean. She tells Johnny every day, multiple times, it's still not happening. We're going to consider using that allowance. We're going to consider using a positive reinforcement strategy to get that room clean. So our first question is our time limit. How long is my child able to wait before the reinforcer is no longer reinforcing? So think about your child. Some kids, they can wait up to a week and they can say, hey, I did my chores 5 out of 5 days. I'm ready to earn $5 at the end of the week. Some kids, that may not be quick enough. They may lose that motivation to do it and say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm thinking about just today. I can't think that far ahead and be able to wait that long for something that's not in my grasp yet. They might need it at the end of the day. Some kids, they might even need reinforcement after each task. I say in those situations, think about, okay, you set your bed, here's a quarter. You put your toys away, here's another quarter. And then we do the 4 tasks we need to do. We've earned that dollar at the end. The next question, am I able to accept starting small and working up to longer limits? So going back to that example of cleaning our room can be a super overwhelming task for kids, especially in the beginning, because there are so many tasks with multiple steps. It can be difficult for adults, but when you think about, oh, I have to clean my house today, it can be hard to not be overwhelmed by that because you might have 10 different things that go into cleaning your house. So we need to, be able to accept in the beginning, while the child is still learning what's expected, that we're going to reinforce for shorter periods of time and for lower expectations that we may have in the beginning. And the last question, how quickly can I provide the reinforcer once it is earned? And again, make sure you can follow through. This is the biggest thing. If the kid sees that you're not able to provide that reinforcement, the motivation to do that task that they don't like to do is going to decrease really quickly. So again, always make sure that we're able to follow through with that reinforcement. So some strategies for at home, how we can work with ourselves and our kids on those time limits when it comes to reinforcement. Consider how often you are going to reinforce. Some tasks may be more difficult and may require faster reinforcement. So again, this was our 25 cents idea. We can also think about it maybe if a child has a really hard time doing their homework after school. And maybe you say to them, when you finish your reading worksheet and your math worksheet, you can earn 15 minutes of iPad time. For some kids, those 2 worksheets might have 20 questions, and that can be a lot. So maybe I break it up and I say, all right, if you finish half of your reading worksheet, you can do 5 minutes of iPad and then come back to do the second half. You finish the second half, we'll do another 5 minutes. So there's ways that you can break it up. Biggest thing is make those big tasks small and make them attainable. So that, again, we're building confidence in our children. Always underestimate at first. A successful child is a happy child. So again, it's always easier to start below what you think the child is capable of doing, because it's going to build that confidence. They're going to be happy, and they're going to be happy with what they're accomplishing as well. And again, make sure you're reinforcing in the moment. If we agree to do this at the end of the day, we're going to do it at the end of the day, and we're going to be consistent with it. So we are gearing kind of towards the end of our presentation. I know I gave you guys a lot of information in a pretty short amount of time. So what I want to do is I want to just take a look at a couple points that I think are going to be the most important for you to think about when you're, considering using reinforcement at home and how to maybe get out of that system of using bribes. So let's take a look. Our main takeaways. Be clear and consistent. Biggest thing, make sure that the child knows what's expected, make sure you're aware of what's expected, and have those same expectations every day that you're working on it. Teamwork makes the dream work. One of my favorite quotes, but it's true. When we're working on reinforcing those appropriate behaviors, we want everybody on board. We want our parents, we want our grandparents, we want our babysitter, we want the clinic, we want the school, we want the child. We want everybody to know what the goal is and how we're going to get to that goal. Use praise often. When I'm working in schools and in the clinic, I always say I want us to praise on a 5-to-1 ratio. We're going to praise 5 times for every time that we correct. When we're praising, be specific on what they're doing. It can be something so small that you wouldn't even think to praise them about it. But the more that we're building our children up, the more confident they're going to be to tackle some more of those difficult things. It can be as little as something of saying, hey, I loved how nicely you walked in from the bus and you put your shoes on the shoe mat. Something so simple. But again, it's going to build that confidence up in our kids. Always start where your child is able to. This comes back, we might have to dial back our expectations, and that's okay. We don't have to stay at that point forever, but we always want to start. We want to meet the child where they're at. Because when we do that, again, a confident child is a happy child, is a learning child. So we're going to continue moving forward. And always reevaluate your expectations based on your kids. Take that time to reflect on yourself. We all know that even among siblings, kids are really different. Kids may struggle and kids may excel at things that we would never think that they would. So always, consider that when you're thinking about those expectations for your child. And that is the end of our presentation. I want to thank you all so much for joining our second parent training with Professional Therapy Associates. I hope that this is beneficial for you and that you're able to take something away from here. Please feel free to reach out, within the comments of this video or through my email or the email Professional Therapy Associates so that we can provide, some more guidance if that's needed for you. I will be adding my email and information to the end of this video within the comments so that, you can reach out for any questions you may have. I thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the month and a wonderful January. We'll be seeing you in February for our third parent training. Thank you, everybody, so much.